to the historic Ocean House, a luxurious hotel that pays homage to New England's golden age of hospitality, with timeless elegance and renewed civility. This treasured resort is the setting of our special broadcast of the Ocean House Author Series, each program featuring nationally best-selling and award-winning authors in a salon-style conversation, hosted by Ocean House owner, actress, and best-selling author Deborah Goodrich Royce. WCRI is pleased to partner with the Ocean House to present this ongoing series, which brings you the best and the brightest of the literary world. Now, let's take you to the Ocean House.
Beatriz Williams is a New York Times, USA Today, and internationally best-selling author of Husbands and Lovers, Our Woman in Moscow, The Summer Wives, Her Last Flight, The Golden Hour, The Secret Life of Violet Grant, 100 Summers, and several other works of historical fiction, including 4 novels in collaboration with fellow best-selling authors Karen White and Lauren Willig. A graduate of Stanford University with an MBA in finance from Columbia University, Beatriz worked as a communications and corporate strategy consultant in New York and London before her first novel was published in 2012. Beatriz's books have won numerous awards, have been translated into more than a dozen languages, and appear regularly on bestseller lists around the world. Born in Seattle, Washington, Beatriz now lives near the Connecticut shore with her husband and 4 children, where she divides her time between laundry and writing. Welcome, Beatriz. Beatriz will be in conversation this evening with Deborah Goodrich Royce. Deborah's latest book, Reef Road, was a national bestseller and named one of the best books of 2023 by Kirkus Reviews, and it was an Indie Next pick by the American Booksellers Association. Her forthcoming book, Best Boy, comes out February 24th, 2026. You can pre-order through Martin House Books. There's some great swag if you pre-order through us. She began as an actress in All My Children and in multiple films before transitioning to the role of story editor at Miramax Films, developing Emma and early versions of Chicago and A Wrinkle in Time. With her husband Chuck, Deborah restored the Avon Theater, Martin House Books, Ocean House Hotel, Deer Mountain Inn, United Theater, and numerous Main Street projects in both Rhode Island and the Catskills. Beatriz and Deborah will now be in conversation. When the conversation concludes, we will open it up to questions, so if you raise your hand, we'll run you a microphone so the folks listening in the future will hear your questions. And that's it for me, so without any further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Beatriz Williams and Deborah Goodrich Royce.
I want to raise a glass to you and welcome you back.
Second that.
Everyone, cheers.
Cheers.
So, Beatriz was the very, very first author I ever had at the Ocean House. Before I was
There's a plaque somewhere,
an acknowledged writer. I was a secret writer back in the day. So, thank you for returning. Thank you all for being here. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Yep.
Cheers to you as well for
Yes.
putting on this author series, which I think is always a highlight of my book tour, and I'm sure for all the many authors that you bring in here.
Well, thank you. I'll 2 secs on that. It was an unintended consequence of my own writing career, and I was encouraged to do it by Susie Stanglin, who helps me with social media, and she really pushed to do it, and it has been really one of the highlights of the writing career. As you know, it's a lonely world writing books, but I get to talk to other writers. So I love this book. I will begin by saying I have a new thing where I not only read the book, but I listen on audio if I can, and you had 2 readers or 3? 2.
There were 6.
6.
There was...
Oh, because you had men.
Because,
yes,
so
you also had men.
There's the character in the past,
Yes.
Providence Dare. There's another one for Audrey, who's our main character. There is another one for Meredith, her mother, who walked into this book and sort of took it over a bit. And so I ended up doing several chapters from her point of view and dove into her past. But I also gave, and I've started doing, I've done this a few times in earlier books, and I've started doing it again. I've given the men in the book a voice. They each get a chapter or 2. And so they told me, they said, how would you like it if we had male narrators read those chapters? And I said, that's a great idea, because I have a hard time picturing a woman trying, I try to give them male voices when I'm writing them, and I can't imagine a woman bringing herself to say some of the things that, my men say.
Well, it's a different point of view.
In these
we'll
books.
Get to that. Why don't you start by telling us what this book is about?
All right, so we're back on Winthrop Island, which we can see the real life inspiration. Maybe not today, it's a bit hazy. Somewhere out there is Fisher's Island, which is the real life inspiration for Winthrop Island. And I wrote my first Winthrop Island novel way back in 2018. That was The Summer Wives. And that one did really well, and they wanted me to write more. And I took a little break, and then I came back with Beach at Summerlee, Husbands and Lovers. I know many of you came to me through Husbands and Lovers. So Under the Stars is the fourth one. And it was represented to be by publisher. They wanted to stick with like present day in Winthrop Island. And I said, I'm happy to write more. I want to bring Monk and Mallory back from the last book. But I need to find a really good historical narrative to bring to, I love that dialogue between past and present. So I stumbled on the story of the wreck of the steamship Atlantic in 1846, which I'm sure we'll discuss a little more. And I tied that together. We go back and forth between the wreck of the steamship off the rocks of what was, Fishers, and in my book is Winthrop Island. Go back and forth between that and the present day, where we have some ghosts from the Winthrop Island past return to Winthrop. Audrey, she's an aspiring chef who's just been betrayed by her husband. She comes to Winthrop to stay with her mother, Meredith, who grew up on Winthrop and is now a film star who needs to detox in order to make it to her next film. I'm sure this is probably a situation that may have cropped up a few times. Not personally, but actresses perhaps. And so they untangle their own relationships. They meet up with Sedge Peabody, who is a character from Husbands and Lovers, who I felt needed a happy ending of his own. I won't say whether he gets it. But of course, Audrey's father is none other than the bartender at the Mohegan Inn, which plays a major role in Husbands and Lovers. Mike Kennedy is confronted with the daughter that he hasn't seen since she was 3 years old. So that all ties together when we find some paintings in the cellar of the Mo.
So let's start, because I have many questions about all those things. What was your way in? Was it simply that your publisher asked you to write about Winthrop again, or was this steamship running aground, eating at you? What triggered this?
I wish I could say, and it in some ways it was a challenging book to write, because it wasn't like I came to my editor saying, oh my gosh, I found out about this steamship, I really want to write it. I had actually started a totally different book that is set on Winthrop, but is in mid-century, and I was pitching my editor. I had already begun writing, because it was a book that I was going to do before I wrote Husbands and Lovers. And it involves a possibly Soviet spy who washes up on the beach at Winthrop. And my editor, and at this point they had Husbands and Lovers and they loved it. It wasn't out yet, but it kept passing its way around, and everyone just was like, oh my gosh, we love this book so much. And she said, she gave that sort of tactful little clearing of the throat that editors do. And she's like, well, it's a great idea, but two things. Number one, I already have a book that I'm editing right now with a spy washed up on the beach of a New England island. Thank you, Martha Hall Kennedy. Martha Hall Kelly. We share the same editor and agent, so we're practically sisters. But yes, I know, she owes me one. But I let her have it, whatever, she's Martha. But the other thing was that they really wanted more of present day Winthrop. And I, like I said, was quite willing to do that because I loved Monk and Mallory. I wanted to have a chance to kind of write a bit more about them, bring them into, as you know, I like my books, I bring in characters from previous books. It's like a whole fictional universe. So I was thrilled to do that, but I did have to go in search of, and this is not something I usually do, I usually have this historical thing that I'm obsessed about. This time I went out in search of it, but it was very easy. I was sort of literally Googling like, interesting historical events in and around Fisher's Island, and then that's how I stumbled on this wreck. And once you read about it, it is incredibly compelling, the story of this wreck, that it was a bit of the Titanic of its day, and now nobody knows about it, but it's a harrowing story. It makes a great arc, and the main challenge for me was, how do I who is my fictional character that is on this ship, and what are the stakes? What is her story? For a while it was his story. I was kind of playing around with a male protagonist. I just wasn't sure how to fit a fictional story into this. And so that was the struggle for me until kind of Providence Dare walked into.
Tell us a little bit about Providence. I like her very much.
You know, what happened was, you know, I had recently actually read a book that took place in mid-19th century New England. And that was a biography of Longfellow called Cross of Snow, which I highly recommend. It is just, you know, if you want good narrative nonfiction biography, it's excellent. I knew almost nothing about Longfellow, other than he wrote some poems that nobody reads anymore because they rhyme. And that's not cool. To have rhyming poems, that's like so 19th century. So, but I read this book and it was so good. One of the stories that really drew me, and this is in no way to imply that the painter who is at the center of Providence's world is in any way, you know, like Longfellow, because Longfellow was a really good man and he loved his wife dearly, but, you know, she was burned to death when her skirt caught fire, and she was an extraordinary woman. I mean, learned, well-read. He spent like 6 or 7 years wooing her before she finally agreed to marry him. And it was just such a heartbreaking story that's at the center of this novel. And so that was kind of like, I started to think about a household of somebody prominent in Boston. And then I imagined Providence Dare, who was a housemaid in this, and witnesses her mistress burned to death. And who is, there is an artist, he is, in my case, he's a painter. He's entirely fictional, but he is supposed to be one of the great mid-19th century painters in America. And something happens. He's found dead at the bottom of a staircase. Providence, at this point, is the only other person in the house. So she falls under suspicion, flees. She's going to go out west under a new name, start a new life. And ends up, of course, on board, the ship Atlantic on its last tragic voyage, but also on board the ship. I thought, well, I need to have something going on there, so I decided to put the detective who is charged with apprehending Providence on board that ship as well. So as the ship is going through 30 hours of being thrown upon the rocks of Winthrop Island, there is this cat and mouse game going on board the ship.
So structurally, the book is nonlinear. You go back and forth between the 1840s, the present day, and 1993.
Yeah.
And you're very good about time stamping your chapters, which I think is a really helpful device to keep the reader connected to where am I now. I love hearing you talk about how you write different timelines.
Yes.
So please take it away.
Well, I'm very careful about it. And I know for a lot of people, they don't like all the jumping around, and I understand that, but that's how I tell stories, because I think it allows us to build a lot of suspense. So yes, I do sometimes require my readers to really kind of engage with that intellectually, but please understand that when I'm doing this, I pay, just like an architect, you pay very careful attention to how you structure it. Each chapter happens, and each jump back and forth in time happens at exactly the moment, you know, as I'm building this story, this house, this story, you know, everything is built in a certain way, in a certain order, to sort of bring you to that climactic moment at the right moment, knowing exactly what you should know at the time. So it's but you know, my dad's an engineer, so I love that kind of that structural challenge. It kind of, to me, folds in really well with the creative challenge of telling the story and bringing characters to life. Because at the end of the day, my books are always very character driven, and that's why it was a bit of a struggle for me. I always write the oldest, the thing furthest back in time first. I write it in its entirety. So Providence's story in its entirety before I even started on Audrey. And then Meredith decided she wanted, you know, a few chapters of her own and a story of her own. So Providence was a challenge because I didn't know who she was. So I can have all this wonderful structure in mind, but it needs to be led by the characters and who the characters are. The character always leads me to the story. And so I love having that creative challenge of bringing the characters to life, which leads me to the story, and then having this, this structural element where I'm like, okay, how do I put all this together in the best possible way to tell the story?
I want to go back to this writing one whole storyline at a time. Do you put little notes like insert storyline here, insert storyline here as you're going along? Do you have little asterisks along the way? Or?
Well, I do know, and sometimes I do move a few chapters around, or I cut chapters in half or something, just depending on, again, if I don't know exactly how things are going to unfold in the present day, I do need to sort of do some adjusting as I go along in terms of that structure. But yes, so as I'm writing Providence's story, I just write it from beginning to end, and then I go in and then I say, okay, chapter 1, Audrey, here we are, and then I will then sort of put, the chapter heading in, that it's going to be Audrey every other time, and then I realize, well, I need to fit some more in here, and in the beginning, I was very much 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, as I think I've gotten more skilled and used to it, there's always a bit of a rhythm there. If you notice, it's like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or then a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
So it's a waltz.
It's a bit, yes. And it depends on the pacing of whose story is pacing, and I try to kind of, but I think that we human beings have an innate sense of rhythm. It's important to have rhythm in novels and not just be sort of randomly, well, it's time for another Providence chapter, it's time for another Audrey chapter. It's really, I think we really have an appreciation for rhythm and pacing and that sort of the beat that underlies the novel.
Totally. So I want to talk about, the title, we were talking about it before we came out here. Under the Stars is a terrific title for a lot of reasons, but talk about the symbolism of it, how it relates to both storylines, the main characters, and take that away.
Yeah. Well, the thing about titles, and I almost always, it's one of those questions that always comes up when I do talks. Someone always says, well, how did you come up with that title? And sometimes people usually ask the question when they feel that the title somehow doesn't fit, or they don't feel like it. I think a lot of people were ambivalent about, for example, Husbands and Lovers. It's a very catchy, showy title, but people were like, that really kind of doesn't, gives you the wrong idea. And I was sort of like, well, I was kind of channeling D.H. Lawrence. I don't know what you were channeling, but also, the old Navy toast, to wives and sweethearts, and may they never meet. And so it was kind of a play on that. So, but the book walked in with that title, and the publisher loved it, so it stayed. Under the Stars kind of really had no title. And so we're kind of in the revision stage, and we're starting to do all what they call the package, the book's package, which is title, cover, how it looks, how it presents to the reading public. And we do that thing where you start brainstorming titles. And you're like, your next book has a great title, which I always said I'm so excited. Best Boy is the title of, great title. It did not walk in with that great title. There wasn't an obvious title. So we're brainstorming. And brainstorming, it's a brainstorm of one. There's one brain involved. They ask me to come up with titles, which they reject. And we go through this process over and over again until I sort of feel like I'm really starting to just free associate. And I can't remember exactly how the idea of Under the Stars, but it occurred to me that you have a great double meaning here. Because you have this drama that takes place aboard this ship, and it crashes on the rocks and just sort of so the steamship comes out of New London into Long Island Sound in the middle of a gale. Its boiler bursts. They throw down the anchors, and for the next 30 hours, they're trying to lighten ship. They toss out the coal. They literally take the smokestacks off the ship and toss those over. They toss out all the cargo, some of which is literal money, like gold. They toss it over in order to slow down the dragging of the anchors and give them enough time for the storm to blow out so someone can come out and save them. So for 30 hours, these passengers are on this ship with no power, no heat, no light, and it's Thanksgiving Day. and it finally wrecks on the rocks of Fisher's, i.e. Winthrop, at 4:30 in the morning, under the stars at night. But there is a double meaning, because both of the women in the primary characters in both narratives, so Providence in 1846 and Audrey in the present day, live under a star, and that star is the person who, in Providence's case, her employer, who is this painter who is a star in his right, and Audrey's mother is a very famous, renowned actress. She was, in fact, nominated for an Oscar for her role in a movie called Her Last Flight.
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. She plays Pepper in Tiny Little Thing, and then in Along the Infinite Sea. So this was partly a placeholder, because I was like, it's actually hard. If you need to come up with 5 different movie ideas, I'm just going to use my books, because it's just easier. I know what they're about. I don't have to think about what these movies are going to be. So Meredith is like a big, big star. And Audrey grows up under that star, and Providence is under that. So I'm always interested, actually, in people who are adjacent to that kind of celebrity and fame, because it does, it is a very challenging way to grow up and to form your own identity and to decide what it is you want to do with your individual life, whether it is under the light of this person that you live with, or whether you decide to move outside from under that light and develop your own identity. I just thought it was I'm fascinated by that dynamic. So it occurred to me that Under the Stars really brings in both ideas. And also, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there's also this idea of, the star, there's a permanence there. Whatever is going on our Earth, there's all this stuff going on, but you look up at the stars and they're still there. The stars kind of don't care what happens to us.
Exactly.
All our problems here on Earth, and it's in a way kind of comforting. You can kind of let it go in a way, and say,
if you can get that perspective.
We'll take a short break and be back with the Ocean House Author Series here on WCRI.
Ocean House, located on the scenic Atlantic Ocean in historic Watch Hill, is one of only 14 triple 5-star resorts in the world, with superb guest accommodations, a world-class spa, dining, and events. At 4 on Saturday afternoon, November 22nd, Ocean House is hosting another of its popular Ocean House Author Series, hosted by multiple best-selling author Deborah Goodrich Royce. Enjoy complimentary wine and light bites as you listen to a panel discussion with renowned authors Genevieve Wheeler-Brown, Amanda Reynal, Christopher Spitzmiller, and Ashley Whitaker, sharing their designs to refresh and update your home and garden. Held at the breathtaking Ocean House, this exciting event begins at 4 p.m. Saturday, November 22nd. For information and tickets, go to oceanhouseevents.com. That's oceanhouseevents.com.
And we're back with the Ocean House Author Series on WCRI.
Let's talk about Audrey and Meredith. They are a fabulous mother-daughter duo. Meredith is a gas, to use that term. She is, they're very different.
Yes.
So Audrey came first, and Meredith revealed herself.
Meredith revealed herself. So if you've read my books, I kind of love this dynamic where you have one woman who has this huge personality and who says what she thinks, does what she wants, juxtaposed against someone who, has a conscience, I guess, for lack of a better, somebody who is less able to just go there and so it's a bit of an id superego situation. And I think ideally you want to be kind of in the middle, where you're brave enough to stand up for yourself, but also, sensitive to others' feelings and not, living a kind of a selfish life. So you want to kind of marry the two. So that's why I love that juxtaposition, to soften the bolder one and to give a little more courage to the one who needs a little more courage. So I love that dynamic. And Audrey walks on, and she's hit an extremely low moment in her life. I sort of piled on every possible tragedy I could for Audrey.
She's got a lot.
I know. But she walks on, and the first scene they're together, and they're on the ferry on the way to Winthrop. And I love having my two characters on the page, and they start interacting with each other. And, Meredith, I love it when a character just is themselves right away. And Meredith and Audrey have this bickering dynamic. Audrey literally calls her mother Meredith. I mean, it's not like, a mother-daughter thing. They love each other, but they have zero capacity for expressing this to each other. And there's so much hurt on both sides. Meredith's been damaged herself. And I knew she was damaged. I was like, Meredith has baggage. And that was when I decided to go back in time and figure out what Meredith's baggage was. And it's a doozy.
Yeah.
It's a doozy. I love that. I think as someone who's very character driven, I love having characters who develop on the page, and that leads you into this great story because, I kind of, I wanted to see if I could pair up Audrey and Sedge Peabody. I love Sedge. He was kind of left over from Husbands and Lovers, like musical chairs. When the music ended, he had no one to sit with. So I was like, okay, I need to find someone for Sedge, and that was kind of my starting point for Audrey. But then Meredith came in and kind of took over a bit. So I'm like, oh wait, this is a love story, but it's also a mother-daughter story. And that mother-daughter story is also kind of a love story. And it turns out Meredith has a love story because, of course, Audrey was not conceived immaculately. This is Meredith, after all. And so Meredith has a bit of a love story of her own and some, unfinished business back on the island. So it just turned into all these different, it's an ensemble love story.
Very much so. Now talk a bit, I think, very unique to you, although you can tell me who else does it. You really do, as you mentioned, bring characters back from book to book. You have clusters of characters. I just looked at your cool postcard,
yes,
which many of you have.
Postcard in your book.
The books are grouped
into
the Schuyler family or the mid-century novels, which is a wonderful way of working. What was the genesis of that for you? And did you know you were going to do it early on, or before you did it, or when did it come up?
So where I got it, I sort of tracked down where I got, and it's partly just, it evolved organically because when I wrote 100 Summers, and I literally had sort of put aside another book, and when the idea for 100 Summers came to me, wrote 100 Summers, I loved that book so much. Readers loved that book so much.
Set here, by the way.
Yes.
Watch Hill.
We had so much fun, and one of the characters in the book, Aunt Julie, was a reader favorite. Everybody loved Aunt Julie. And so I thought, well, I need to bring a little bit of that Aunt Julie moxie to my next book, which was The Secret Life of Violet Grant. So I thought, well, let's just make them Schuylers. Let's explore the rest of this Schuyler family. This was before Hamilton, by the way. They stole that idea from me, the Schuyler sisters. I don't even get royalties. It's
not fair.
I know, it's not fair. So I really, and all of a sudden, like, the family tree kind of came to life. And I think we had some, just really great characters in that book. You had Violet Schuyler, around World War I, and you had her great niece, Vivian Schuyler, in the 1960s. So that's the kind of back and forth, and I loved it. And Vivian has two sisters, Tiny and Pepper, and I was like, I wrote very briefly about Tiny. Oh, she's just married this, this scion of a political family in Boston, and she's expecting a baby, and she's practically perfect in every way. Basically, I thought, something tells me perfect little Tiny, is hiding a big secret, and that turned into Tiny Little Thing. And then, of course, Pepper is still there, and Pepper actually appears in Tiny Little Thing, and so I had to give Pepper her story, and that became Along the Infinite Sea, and all of a sudden I have this shared universe. And I think, if I look back, well, was there anything, that nothing really gave me the idea for it, but, I was a big reader of Trollope back during business school when I should have been studying and doing my case studies. I was chain reading Trollope, and Trollope does the same thing with the Barchester Chronicles, the Palliser novels. It's all a shared universe and characters who sort of their story kind of semi-concludes in one book, but you want a little more, and you see them wandering through the next book with a baby, and you're like, oh, good, they did get married and have a baby. That's wonderful, So. So I really kind of liked that idea because I feel like when a story comes to its natural conclusion, you have to think of ways to extend that story. And in some cases, authors can do that really well, but I didn't want to write a series. I love the idea of connected books. So now let's take a look at this other very interesting character and write their story. One of the reasons I was excited to write Under the Stars was I needed more from Monk and Mallory. I loved those characters so much. I wanted to see how their lives are, a year or two down the road. And so luckily, if you have, a trunk full of mysterious 19th century art that you find in the cellar of the Mo and you need an art expert, well, Mallory knows a lot about art, right? So let's take the paintings to Mallory. So that's, it all kind of fit together really well.
And you on your website have family trees, right?
Yes.
For all these different
Yes.
interconnected stories.
I had a Schuyler family tree, and due to reader demand, I kind of went up to my publisher, Ballantine Books, and said, hey, if I kind of, in my very ham-fisted, not very artistically talented hand, draw you a kind of a Winthrop Island families, it's not really a tree, it's kind of multiple trees. Can you make it look pretty? And they said, oh, we can do that. We do that all the time, family trees.
Is it in the book?
It's
I read a galley.
in the book, yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes, in the finished copies of the books,
I'm
there
excited
is
to see that.
Winthrop Island families. And I've also put it on my website, and it should be downloadable if I did it right. You should be able to download and print it.
TBD.
Yes. If you, you've all got hard copies here, but if you got the audio, and certainly you might want to get the audio as well. I love it when people buy the books twice because I have children in college and now in boarding school. So if you want to buy the book twice, I encourage that. I'm sure it will really enrich your experience of the novel.
So we're going to go to your questions in a minute, but you've written a lot of time periods. Is there a favorite, like your sweet spot of a time period?
I do love that mid-century, but it's interesting. The mid-century novels are the ones that haven't sold as well. And I think one of the reasons why we're in the present, because people really engage with that more. And I think having something in the present day and then, I do have so many mid-century. To me, it's just such a fascinating period of time. With the exception of actually the Summer Wives did very well. But I mean, it's not as, I think my core readers, like you guys, love them. But I think it's harder to get someone who hasn't picked up a book to pick up a mid-century novel. For whatever reason, people aren't as attracted to that point in time. I think it helps. I'm kind of a history native. I never even until my writing career really started, expected to be writing books in the 20th century. My father's British. I grew up on all the Victorian and Georgian, novels. I sort of thought that was my period. People are like, wow, you're going back to 1846. And I was like, believe me, I didn't actually have to do that much additional research because my whole body of historical knowledge was like, pre-1900 up until, 12, 15 years ago. So I'm very comfortable in the period. I love writing all periods. And the reason I do is because I love that experience of understanding what it was like to be a human being in any particular period. And I love that setting aside, which I think is so important, of our own cultural expectations, our own even set of values, and trying to understand, why people were the way they were in a previous era. And a sneak peek for my next book, we go all the way back to the winter of the Great Snow of 1716 to 1717, for the next book. So that goes way back, and that's one of the reasons I started rereading Patrick O'Brian, was to get my, and that he's writing about sort of 100 years after that, but just to kind of slip back more in time. And he's such a master at bringing the more distant past alive.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? The Winter of the Great Snow? And
Well,
what you're
so
working on?
this is actually a seed. This is what I love doing. I will plant a seed in a book 4 books ago that I then bring to life. I literally sort of bookmark it in my head. So who's read The Beach at Summerlee? Okay, a few of you. So you will notice that when a certain FBI agent arrives on the island, his cover story is that he is writing a book about the Great Snow of 1717. And our main character, Amelia Winthrop, who is Mrs. Peabody, almost 100 years old in these present day novels, she happens to work as a volunteer at the Library and Historical Society, so she digs up the journal of Hephzibah Winthrop. And my editor's like, do we have to call her Hephzibah? I'm like, unfortunately we do, because it's already baked in the pie. We already have this journal that I created, and The Beach at Summerlee, because I thought that was a really good colonial name. And so this is the story that happens in the past on Winthrop takes place over the winter of that huge snowfall. You can look it up. It's a kind of an extraordinary weather event in New England, the greatest snowfall we ever had. You couldn't get out of your house. People starved. And so I love doing that. I literally, when I wrote that, I was like, at some point, I am going to write about Hephzibah Winthrop and the Great Snow of 1717. And it was a promise I have now kept to myself.
Was she on Fisher's Island?
Yes. Well, she is a fictional person, but she is...
You put her there.
I put her there, and she is on Winthrop, yes.
Wow, that's a heck of a place to be in 1717.
Well, it is. And the funny thing was, the things that are going on there, and let's just say there's a pirate romance going on here. Yes, pirates. I finally got to write my pirate romance.
I hear a happy murmur
among
the crowd.
Pirates. But the funny thing was, literally halfway through writing this, I stumbled on the perfect research book. It had been out of print. It was this tiny little press that brings like obscure out of print books, and it was literally a history of Fisher's Island. And it talks about the Great Snow, and I had posited that there must have been a lot of sheep on the island. It would have been a great place to graze sheep because there's no predators. And sure enough, and they talk about what happened to the big sheep flock that was on the island. And you know I love sheep.
I do.
Karen and Lauren and I in our books together, there's a sheep theme running through all the books. And there was that, and then it talks literally about pirates and all the places where there's supposed to be buried treasure on actual Fisher's Island. And I'm like, this is literally the plot of my book, And so it was really great. And so then I could go back and just add a lot of stuff and also feel really secure. Like I wasn't just making this up out of thin air. Like my educated guesses about Fishers would have been a great place to bury your treasure if you were a pirate were actually true. I felt really vindicated by this. And also, the sheep. So
you can think like a pirate.
I think like a pirate, exactly.
So before we open it to questions, we're at that point, just talk a little bit about what a sealed community like Fisher's gives you in your ability to explore, families, different classes, how societies function.
So one of the things that really struck me, and I grew up on the West Coast, and I moved here when I moved to New York right after college. I met the man who became my husband and ended up, I'm not going to say reluctant New Englander, but I was an unexpected New Englander, let's put it that way. So luckily I was an anthropology major in college, so I was able to kind of navigate this culture, in a respectful, I hope, way. I've stumbled a few times, like when I called my mother-in-law by her first name when we first met. That was apparently a big no-no out here in the East Coast. Yeah, who knew? We got over it.
She
Actually,
knew.
The first thing she said to me when we called her up to let her know we'd just gotten engaged, the first thing she said to me was, "Now you can call me Caroline." So I knew I had I had come to the inner circle at that point. But one of the things that struck me in New England, on the West Coast, nobody's really lived there for more than a maybe, there may be a grandparent somewhere, but I mean, like, people move around a lot, and there's a lot of people who've arrived recently. There's not that sense of people staying generation after generation in the same place. I live in Lyme. The Griswold family has literally been living on the same point of land since like 1640 or 50. I mean, like, a long time ago. And they're still there, and thriving. And my kids went to school with Griswolds, and so, are there any Griswolds here? I love you. I mean, this is not, I think it's terrific, but it is interesting because when you have people summering in the same places, living in the same places, generation after generation, you have to find a way to get along. Okay. You have to find a way to be nice to people that you don't actually like very much. And in the West Coast, if you don't like someone, you walk away. That's it. You never have to see them again. But in these communities, you have to find a way to get along. And in islands in particular, and again, bringing my anthropology into it, islands occupy such an important place in our imagination as human beings, because it's a place where you can go where you don't have to have the outside world influence. You can keep things the same. But there's kind of a problem when you want to keep things the same and keep outsiders out. There's obviously a practical sort of let's call it a gene pool problem.
There's that.
But you have to. But I mean, it represents something that's more, that's less physical and more of ideas. You can't keep everything the same. You have to somehow. Every society has to allow for some kind of change. So what are your mechanisms for allowing change, for allowing innovation into the island? To what extent do you keep things the same? Do you passionately keep things the same? I think Fisher's Island is a place where people passionately want to keep things the same. Like, you can't really go over there and stay overnight. You can't kind of come and, have a great meal out. I mean, they kind of really don't want you there at all. And you have to be aware of that. But there does have to be a way to bring a little bit of new into the island, or you calcify. You literally, you can't sustain that. So I'm fascinated by that. That friction between keeping things the same and innovating and bringing in newness. So all the trouble starts in my Winter Island novels usually when a new person arrives on the scene.
Right.
And then there's all these people who just want to get out. But it does kind of pull you back again as well, because it is a place where, everybody knows your name, where you feel safe and wanted and a part of something. And I think all the characters are in this book, and a lot of my other Winthrop Island novels, they are people searching for their place in the world. And whether that place is a physical place or a person, but a sense that this is home for me. And that's really what I think we're all kind of looking for. So,
well, I would say Watch Hill has some similarities. It's not an island, but I've only been here 25 years, so I'm new.
You're still from away.
I'm from away, and my husband and I, who's Watch Hill, we have been agents of change.
You have.
We restored this hotel. There were many thoughts and feelings about that. But not everybody was thrilled with that. So it's really interesting to be an agent of change in a traditional place where there are people who don't want change.
They don't want change. They come here specifically because it's always the same. You arrive, everything looks the same beautiful houses, the same view, same people, and I love that. I think that people do want a sense of place and a sense that they belong somewhere. And when you come back and everything's different, you don't feel like you belong anymore. It's like going back, like for your college reunion. Sometimes they put so many new buildings, you don't even know where to go. You're like, is this really my college anymore?
Right.
And
very comfortable.
Strange kids wandering around, or they are so young. How can they be in college? And you're like, do I belong here?
Exactly.
And the college goes to great lengths to make you feel back at home. They really want you to feel back at home, so
Oh, yes, with good reason.
donate money. So, but again, that's actually, that's really a great example. Like a college is always trying to balance that tradition and innovation.
I went to a women's college, and I will tell you, women's colleges do not get the donor dollars that men's universities and colleges get. And when they go co-ed, there are women who just won't ever give again.
Yeah.
Very complicated issues.
My daughter is at an all-girl boarding school. It was all her idea. And interestingly, it's the same boarding school where my characters went to in The Summer Wives, which is not entirely a coincidence, because that's where my husband's grandmother went to boarding school, and I had heard all the stories, and I thought, oh, this would definitely be a place where my characters would go. Just like this larger-than-life headmistress, and there's horses and horsey girls, and I thought, this is perfect. And then my sister moved nearby, and we went to visit, and we're like, oh, look, here's the school. And we went to tour it, and my daughter is watching all these girls riding horses in between classes, and she's like, I want to go to school here. And we were taken aback, but she eventually got her way. But she went from like public co-ed high school, in Connecticut to this all-girl boarding school, and it's been great for her.
So she loves it?
Big advocate, yes, for this, girl power. There is so much girl power there. It's great, like her confidence, everything. So I can understand.
Yeah, my college was interestingly horsey as well.
Oh.
They had a 400-acre horse farm and this huge
Girls and
horses.
For some
It's a
reason,
thing.
they go together.
We'll take a short break and be back with the Ocean House Author Series here on WCRI.
Ocean House, located on the scenic Atlantic Ocean and historic Watch Hill, is one of only 14 triple five-star resorts in the world, with superb guest accommodations, a world-class spa, dining, and events. At 4 on Saturday afternoon, November 22nd, Ocean House is hosting another of its popular Ocean House Author Series, hosted by multiple best-selling author Deborah Goodrich Royce. Enjoy complimentary wine and light bites as you listen to a panel discussion with renowned authors Genevieve Wheeler-Brown, Amanda Reynal, Christopher Spitzmiller, and Ashley Whitaker, sharing their designs to refresh and update your home and garden. Held at the breathtaking Ocean House, this exciting event begins at 4 p.m. Saturday, November 22nd. For information and tickets, go to oceanhouseevents.com. That's oceanhouseevents.com.
And we're back with the Ocean House Author Series on WCRI.
Ask your questions.
Yes.
The hands are shooting up.
Hi. Very interesting. I went to those meetings way back in, I believe, 2005, when, with all the town people wanting to change this property, when you and Chuck wanted to do such a nice job. And they were very interesting meetings, because I had a condo here at that point, but at that point,
I'm picking up my champagne glass.
At that point, it was either, because I had been here a little bit longer than you have, but I just loved it, fell in love with it, and people were scared. They didn't want to change.
Change is scary.
I didn't want 5 mega McMansions here. I wanted the Ocean
Pop
House
stars
or the new
moving
Ocean,
in,
and it's just.
Not my fault.
Chuck and Deborah have done so much for this town and for Westerly included, and I'm just still loving it as much as I loved it 38 years ago.
The envelope with your cash is going to be at the door. Thank you. All right, another question right there.
Well, as Beatrice and I discussed earlier, I have been her fan since the first book, which was about Watch Hill, as you all know. And I've been following her wonderful career and also hoping that her children are getting out of school so she can maybe stop doing laundry or something.
Well, that's the thing. I was thinking of changing the bio on my website about the laundry thing because, they're like off at college and some of them graduate, but then they come home for summer. And there I'm in the laundry room again.
They bring it.
They
yeah.
forget how to do laundry. They're perfectly good at doing laundry off at college and on their own. But for some reason, the hampers start to
towels
overflow.
Definitely.
I'm like, here I am again. But I want them to come back, and visit me. So
It's the price you pay.
it's the price I pay.
When I had teenagers, I said to a girlfriend, being the mother of a teenager is like being the mistress of a married man.
Uh-oh.
They don't want to talk to you, they don't want to talk to you, they don't want to talk to you, and they say now, and you say, yes, darling. I'm here for
Yes,
you. What do you
dear.
need?
How can I
Yes,
serve
dear.
you? Yeah.
Anyway, my question. Oh, by the way, I totally agree with the other speaker, and we can't thank Chuck and Deborah enough. I think we should all clap. Seriously. Because if they hadn't stepped up, Watch Hill would have probably been gone. But anyway,
Another check outside.
no. But Beatrice, this is a very question because I love the period. Is there any way we can get you to create a pre-post-revolutionary family? Because we are just about to come up the 250th anniversary
right around
of the Revolutionary War.
Well, 1717 is pre.
17.
But it's
No,
pre.
I know,
Too
but
pre.
I want something.
Right around
Just pre.
A
like
family
right
I can read about
Well-
for 10 novels or whatever.
Yes. Well,
That gets its roots in, and I think you could do the French side, the American side,
heard it here,
the British side, and there's so much material, and I'd love to see how you would handle it.
Well, I
You've made her
am open to any
speechless.
period, but what I'm saying is like the historical, something has to reach out from history and grab me. And it's usually people caught in an impossible situation. And so, yeah, I mean, I am always on the lookout for ideas. And hey, if I find the right, I've always kind of one of the things I've always wanted to write is a colonial / early American ghost story. I feel like I live in a very old house, and the very first night we were there, the house we're not sure exactly when it was built, but probably like the early part of the 18th century. And I remember like the first night I was going to sleep, and just as I was going, and I'm not someone who's sensitive to ghosts. There's people who are like, oh, I can feel them in the room, whatever. And I'm agnostic on whether they exist or not. But I was like going to sleep, and I was like looking around the room, this very, very old room with literally the paneling, etc. And I was like, I wonder how many people have been born here and died in this exact room. Like if there are ghosts, if they exist, they're definitely here because this place has been around for a while. So, that kind of got me thinking about it's so atmospheric, the history here. One thing I love about New England is how history is literally everywhere you look. I love that about New England. And that sense that someone lived here before me and I don't know their story kind of bugs me. I want to know their story. So, who knows? We may get there.
Fascinating. We have time for a couple more questions.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you in person. I'm a big fan.
Oh,
I think I have read all
Thank
of your
you.
books over the past
Well, you
few
can
years.
check on the little thing on the back.
I have. I was wondering if your jazz series was going to get continued anytime soon. And what I think is really amazing is that you have all these fabulous ideas for these books that, pop up. And I don't know how you keep it all straight, but I do see those characters popping up from series to series and book to book, and it's just amazing. But I am interested about Jen Kelly.
Everyone is. There is not a week that goes by, sometimes more than once a week, where I get an email or a message on social media. I just finished The Wicked Widow. Please tell me there's a fourth Wicked City book. There is. It is in my head. I forward all these emails to my agent, and I say, the fans are speaking. And she said, there need to be more of them.
Oh, these agents.
The people who read them love them passionately. I love them passionately. I love these characters so much. They just haven't sold well. I get all this, it's sort of like the people love them, so I get lots of messages, but then my agent is like, yes, but in aggregate, it's going to be hard to sell this to a publisher. The last one it was published in paperback, and I literally wrote it because I was like, oh my God, my kids are in college, and I need to meet my next two. I wrote it without even telling my agent. And I was like, I wrote it. And so she's like, well, maybe I can get them to publish it in trade paperback, which is what they did. But it was a labor of love. I mean, and I would gladly write another one if I knew that they would publish it. I mean, that's just the sad reality of publishing is that they want to sell books. And there is just this sense that while 10,000 of you would love it, they need 100,000 of you to love it, so that's just kind of the reality. So the only thing you can do is make it go viral on TikTok. If anyone
TikTok is
knows
the key.
how to do that, make it viral on TikTok, and I guarantee you they will be begging me, sending me champagne and flowers to write another Wicked City book, and I will gladly and graciously accept that challenge and write as many as they want, because I do love that series. I may have to just in desperation have a couple of Hardcastles turn up on Winthrop Island to make trouble. So,
I like that.
Yes.
One more question.
Hi, I have a question about your group that you work with, the three authors, the
yes.
three of you.
Anyone White and Lauren Willig,
Yes.
my dear friends.
Are any of those coming out soon? And I have another question about, is anything going to be made into a movie?
Well, have you seen that Jerry Seinfeld episode where he accidentally calls a woman pregnant, and the lesson learned is don't ask until you can see the baby actually coming out of the body.
Pretty much.
And it's a bit the same with authors and movie deals, because we've all been optioned. Actually, one of the W books was optioned at one point. Options have happened and then expired. So, all I can do is encourage people to buy the books, and eventually, you hope a movie deal will follow. I think it was a little bit of manifesting when it was partly convenient for me to have Meredith star in the movie versions of my books, but I think a little bit of manifesting never hurt, right?
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
No, it can hurt. Okay. Oh, one more.
Question. I'm so thrilled to read this book, Under the Stars. I have a couple of other books that are stacked up to read. But is it okay to ask Deborah, can you just give us a teeny little tiny prelude to your new book, Best Boy?
Oh, Best Boy. Okay, I'll give you just a very, very quick.
More envelopes of cash.
Yeah, I'm paying everybody tonight. There's money in the hallway, buckets. I used to be an actress. I got an email a few years ago from a guy said, hey, remember me? I was your best boy in Survival Game, which I really like. It's a very provocative sentence. And a best boy in a movie is someone in the electrical department, and Survival Game was a film I had done, a schlocky action film with a kid called Mike Norris, who was the son of Chuck Norris, remember him? And a wonderful actor called Seymour Cassell, who later went on to do a lot of Wes Anderson films, and prior to that, he'd been nominated for an Oscar. He worked with John Cassavetes all the time, before he ended up in prison for mailing cocaine over state lines, where he lost a finger.
They never learn.
But I put Seymour in the book. I called him Sidney Casson, Seymour Cassell. Anyway, so the guy said this to me, and then he gave these various touch points of our history. He said, remember that Thanksgiving dinner we had together? I did not. He said, you were the only actress that nobody visited on the set. And I thought, well, that's kind of depressing. And how do you know that about me?
As
And
my
I don't
kids would
remember
say.
this about me. And he said, and remember the time we ran into each other at the Cannes Film Festival? I was in the British
People say
Pavilion.
that to me all the time.
He said, I was in the British Pavilion, and you were standing outside holding a baby, and I wondered for a moment if the child was mine. And he concluded by saying, but I knew that wouldn't be possible. And I was like, phew. But I got to thinking about memory, and what if you have a character with a flawed memory, and what if you have a man approach her with this shared history that she doesn't remember? So it's my Greenwich novel. It is set in Greenwich, Connecticut, and a woman receives a letter in her mailbox, not an email, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't know if the
A
guy's
physical letter
telling
is
the
a lot
truth.
sexier and
Yeah.
more mysterious.
Yeah. So
than an email.
and this cover, this wonderful cover, which you can't see out in Radio Land. I love this so much. And the Best Boy cover is slightly similar in that there's a house and a mailbox, but really it's the wording that's more prominent. And I love this.
It pops, as we say in the
It
biz.
pops.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for joining us for this special broadcast of the Ocean House Author Series with Deborah Goodrich Royce. Please tune in each month as we'll bring you a new Ocean House Author Series highlighting nationally best-selling and award-winning authors in a salon-style conversation. Hosted by Ocean House owner, actress, and best-selling author Deborah Goodrich Royce. WCRI is pleased to be partnering with the Ocean House to bring you this ongoing series highlighting the best and brightest of the literary world. Thank you once again for joining us. And in the words of Margaret Atwood, in the end, we all become stories.